Welcome to Get the Facts, the program that provides you with information on government's policies and initiatives. I'm Theodore Henry. Today we're talking about data protection in schools. It's an urgent issue as Jamaica's Data Protection Act is now fully in effect. To help schools comply, the Privacy in Education Program, or PIE, was launched through a partnership between the Jamaica Independent Schools Association, JISA, and data privacy firm Securis. Joining us here to share more is Tamara Mackenzie, president of JISA. Welcome to the program, Lady Mackenzie.
Thank you for having me.
Let's jump right into getting some facts. Now, initially, when we started talking about the Data Protection Act, one of the things that was brought out is that anybody who's collecting data, storing data, using data is a data controller.
Correct.
And you have obligations.
Correct.
And one of the biggest data controllers is a school.
Which is why we're considered a key priority within the Act.
Right.
Because of the amount of data that we're collecting and the wide cross-section that we would collect data on, or parents, or teachers, or children. So when you register a child into a school, whether it be private or public, there are several pieces of data that you would have to provide that institution with.
And this is not just like, okay, it's my name. It's
No,
really sensitive
your
data.
birth certificate, proof of address, maybe a recommendation. So in some cases, pay slip or a letter from your HR with your company. There are so many different data points that are collected to validate your application that is needed. And rightfully so, because you have to create a safe school environment to ensure that everyone within that school community, they're of good character. Right? And that they will also add value to the space. So you're trying to, in as best way as possible, insulate and safeguard the community.
Right.
But then the big question comes, who accesses that data? Why is that data being collected? For what period is that data going to be stored? How it is stored?
How it is stored, right.
So even after students may leave the institution, is their information still accessible, and by whom within that community?
There and yours.
Correct.
As you pay the school as well, nowadays we're all going digital. I want you to help me out here. I want you to paint the picture, like give us a case study. What could happen?
There are so many things from so many different angles. If you think about data breaches that may take place and just the type of activities which would take place within a school community. So you're doing applications, you're making payments.
Right.
In many cases, some schools, some parents may have a card on file.
On file, not a one swipe and gone.
Correct,
Okay.
Especially in spaces that would have gone digital for activities like lunch. In the space of the canteen, some parents may have a card on file.
Yeah.
The school may also be a part of an international framework where the students may be doing overseas examinations, and so the applications for those are different. How is the data that is collected being stored and managed? And if there is a breach, how is that going to be managed? Who is responsible? What does the containment measures look like? Right? And do you actually have business matter experts leading that side of the school operation on behalf of the Board of Governors?
Business matter experts, because all of what you're saying right now, if I know anything about schools, this sounds a lot for a school. So you mentioned Securis.
Securis as
yes.
the experts that we
Tell
have.
us a bit more about that.
So when we looked at the journey of data protection within our country, and it is such a good move that we're there as a country, we have to look at that. Okay. We are still leading the charge regionally in many spaces. And even though it is a very big subject matter to undertake, we have been making steps in the right direction. I think a big part of the challenge is that with the extension or the extension in the grace period, a lot of persons have relaxed the efforts and the mobilization, which is where the danger lies. So if you're running a business, if you're running any organization, even if it is a charity, and you're collecting data, what has been the motions in place? What are the activities for compliance that that entity would have undertaken? As the private school association, what we have decided to do is do our research, so we're better able to respond.
Right.
And in doing that research, we recognize that there is a company that has footprints in Jamaica. It has been in Jamaica now for more than a year, and they are global privacy experts. When we approached them initially, we realized that the cost would have been, as you can understand, very high. And so we negotiated a memorandum of understanding that would have been more accessible for our schools to have a relationship with them, to get training opportunities, but for them to be our data protection controllers or officers representing our schools. When we went to our membership, while some schools would have embraced the Memorandum of Understanding, or some would have deemed it affordable, there were other schools that would have had challenges onboarding.
Oh, no.
Because while we're all independent or private schools, we have different operating contexts. You have some that are within the city, you have some that are rural, you have some that are smaller, some that may operate as multi-grade, and many that still would not have recovered from Hurricane Beryl. Right? And we're not priorities as independent schools. And so we went back to Securis, had follow-up meetings, we advocated, and we were able to get almost 99% discount on the total fees, which is incredible. And I'm really proud that as an association, we would have been able to advocate to that level and created a space where Securis can represent our school system in Jamaica, where they could take that on. It is something that personally I'm proud of, that we would have a corporate entity of this magnitude that would see the need to ensure that as key priorities, our schools are represented and catered to. And so for $27 per year per student, schools can become compliant.
Can?
Yes.
You're saying can, so it's not, it's optional. They could find their own solution.
They could find their own solution.
But
here is an umbrella agreement which would cover the school in terms of their compliance journey. But importantly, here is an umbrella arrangement that would satisfy the different context within which we operate, whether it be numbers, payment terms. So all of those are factored into the agreement that we would have come to with them.
And it's made with, what's the phrase you used? Somebody who's proven in the business.
Tried, tested, and proven, and represent global companies.
Represent global companies. All right, we're going to take a break right here, but please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Keep that smile on their faces and preserve their innocence. Cherish the moments you have with them and create the best memories. Let's inspire our children to dream big and work hard to achieve all they aspire to be. Take the time to listen to our children and really hear their side of the story. Our children deserve love and the right to access their basic needs. Do your part and protect our children.
Welcome back to Get the Facts. We're discussing data protection in schools and how the Privacy in Education (PIE) program is helping institutions meet their legal obligations under the Data Protection Act. Joining us now is Andre Palmer, Head of Practice at Securis Limited. He's here to highlight how this initiative is equipping schools with the tools, the training, and the support that they need to protect personal data and, of course, avoid costly penalties. And not just the penalties, is it, Sir Palmer?
No, man, reputational damage. There is, distress and harm that can be caused to the data subject. There's all of it, but, the controllers always think about the penalties,
right?
Because they still see this as largely a compliance piece of activity. But what we like to say to our organizations and schools in particular, think about it beyond just compliance. Think about the benefits that you can actually harness if you were to adopt an approach to data privacy in a way that is beyond just ticking a box to satisfy a legal requirement. So yes, the penalties, that's one thing, and we have to talk about those, but we want to emphasize the bigger benefits to institutions if this is adopted properly.
Right. Okay, so we've been talking about the MOU, we've been talking about the relationship with schools now, but give me the picture on the ground. They begin the relationship with Securis.
Yeah.
What happens?
Right. So there are three components, Theodore. The first is we strive to understand the unique operating context of each institution.
No one size fits all.
No one size fits all, and we can't take for granted that, or we can't assume that all operations operate in the same way.
Right.
So we have to try to understand the unique processing activities. I mean, some activities are going to be common across all institutions, but we try to understand how personal data flows through each institution. So that begins with really an audit. Coming out of that, we design an approach to managing personal data within institutions. So the development of a data privacy framework. And then that is supported by a DPO, Data Protection Officer as a service, where we act as the institution's appointed data protection officer. Oh. And I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about the role of the DPO, right? Yeah. Because this is a statutory function. It is a function that is required by law. So each data controller, any organization that is collecting and storing and using and sharing and processing personal data, must appoint a data protection officer. Now, I like to describe this particular role. It can be a person or it can be an organization.
Like Securus.
Like Securus.
Right.
But the role of this particular function is to ensure that the organization is complying with the requirements under the Jamaica Data Protection Act. Simply put, the role of the DPO is there to protect the organization from itself. It's a statutory function, so it is one that is required by law. And the role kind of does a few things. One, it is there to support the organization with registering with the regulator, the Office of the Information Commissioner. Right. Again, that is required by law, so they have to do that. Two, it is there to help them manage breaches and incidents, including reporting to the regulator when these things happen. And then three, ensuring that the program that is implemented complies with the requirements under the law. And then four, enabling data subjects to exercise their rights.
Pardon me, if I can just come in here. So it's not just a reactive role.
No.
It's intended to be proactive and continuing through the relationship.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what we're proposing under the MOU is to provide DPO support to schools for 5 years.
Okay.
Because we do recognize that the road to compliance can actually be quite long. So over a course of 5 years, we're providing ongoing support, ongoing responses to both the institutions and to the regulator, and ensuring on a continuous basis that these institutions are complying with the requirements under the Jamaica Data Protection Act.
Got it. How do you help the schools with compliance? Like, for example, you go into a school and you realize that some really critical data, name, address, credit card number, is stored in one of those black and white notebooks in the office somewhere, and somebody can come into the head office and just open it if they want.
Yeah.
How do you help them with, so you've identified it as a weakness, how do you help them with compliance per se?
So again, one of the processing standards that's detailed in the Act is called organizational and technical measures. Yeah. So each institution needs to have in place specific technical and organizational measures to ensure that the data is being held securely. Yeah. So when we do that initial audit, when we do the review of how data flows through the organization, and we identify what you've just pointed out as an area that needs improvement, we will make certain recommendations and support the institution with putting these things in place to ensure that they're now at a place of compliance. So if it's a case that, we may need to implement some organizational measures like, digitizing paper records, for example, right, or locking the filing cabinets when you have personal data that is being collected, or operating a clean desk policy, or implementing multi-factor authentication on mobile devices and so on. Right. Those are things that we will recommend and support institutions with doing. One of the things that we recognize, Theodore, is that schools will not necessarily have a wealth of resources, human resources, to do some of these things. So while we make recommendations around improving some of the weaknesses that we may identify, we go a step further by actually helping them to implement, because we recognize that they may not have the technical resources on hand to do some of those things.
Right. Okay, so you're looking at the school itself.
Absolutely.
And that informs your recommendations.
Yes.
Does the school itself also inform how your training sessions happen?
Yeah, again, going back to where I started, we're not starting from an assumption that every single school operates in exactly the same way. So depending on what we uncover during that initial audit phase, we will design a training program to meet each institution where they are. Now, there are some components of the program that are going to be standard, right, because all institutions need to have a baseline understanding of what is required of them by law, and need to have some program elements that are actually quite common because they are statutory requirements. But building on that is going to be a bespoke or tailored training approach that is designed to meet each institution based on the findings of the initial audit exercise.
Got it. I like what I'm hearing, because essentially, as we said at the beginning, not one size fits all.
Cannot be.
The point is to not just give the institution something, but to help each institution in the town, in the rural areas, big, small, to actually get to the point that they need to get. We're in the last part of the interview, the toenail, so to speak, and I want to give you a moment to speak directly to those who are watching, because school principals are there, teachers are there, parents are there, students are there. Help us. Ultimately, this is about protecting the students. What message would you like to share with them?
So 3 things. One, the Data Privacy Act is here. The Data Protection Act, rather, is here, and it's not going away. So it's not. Yeah. So it's not the 9-day wonder that is going to disappear. And institutions, the second point, institutions collect a lot of personal data, including sensitive personal data. So from a vulnerability perspective, they are low-hanging fruit and an easy target. If there is compromise of the personal data, when we think of the harm to the data subject, the students, the parents, the teaching community, the stakeholder groups, it's vast. So schools have a duty of care and are required to ensure that they're protecting the data about the people that they're collecting data on in a way that complies with the requirements of the Act. So what we've done at Secures is we've created this MOU because we see this as part of our corporate social responsibility. So we've put a lot into the program, as you've heard, and what we're asking for school principals, administrators, school leaders to do is meet us halfway. Ensure that you're doing the right things by your students, by your parents, by your faculty, to protect them by protecting the data that you're collecting about them, because it's more than just a compliance activity, but it is actually the right thing to do. And that's the point I want to leave with the viewers.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. This has been Get the Facts. We've been talking about data protection in schools. Our guests were Mrs. Tamara McKenzie, President of the Jamaica Independent Schools Association, and Andre Palmer, Head of Practice, Securus Limited, sharing insights on the Privacy in Education program and how schools can meet their data protection obligations. They also shared that there is a pretty good option out there if you feel overwhelmed and you need that expertise. Thank you for watching. Thank you for acting. And until next time, I'm Theodore Henry. Take care.